All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling in, taking time out of your Friday to hear me speak for a little bit. Hey, everyone, good afternoon. Can everyone please raise their hands if they can hear me? All right, golden. Awesome. So thanks for taking time out of your Friday afternoon to, just practice some Revit and hopefully we can learn something together. Uh, so let's just dive right in and just get started. For those of you that called in a couple of weeks ago, um, this model may look familiar. This was the model that we built where we did basic model setup, started with levels and grids and why they're important. And we started putting a basic structure together. And we went into a little bit of nested families, which we got into these thickened slabs over footings. We spoke about how to use structural framing for linear families and how that can be efficient when you're modeling and trying to put something together in your mind as to how this is going to be built. And we worked on these skill saw families, the tools that you need to make your life easier, but you don't really show the world that, right? So we're going to keep building on this model. If you happen to save your previous model, great. But if not, I will share this link with you so that you guys can download this file and keep working on it with me. So how do I send a chat to everyone? Let's see. Here we go. I'm trying to send this to all of you guys. I will take just 1 or 2 more minutes to see if I can, here we go, chat. So if everyone, I just sent everyone a chat to the entire group. If you download the files in that link, you'll see a couple of things in there. So if I go ahead and open that webinar, you'll see pretty much 3 files that are important. The model, which is what we're working on today. I figured instead of going through and having you guys update your keyboard shortcuts, this is a good time just to go ahead and upload mine. And then we have a board form banner JPEG that we're going to use today in part of our training. So to bring in those keyboard shortcuts that are in that Dropbox link, first off, feel free to raise your hands as soon as you guys have it downloaded. If you guys have it open, and I think we're going to use that feature for me to move forward. I don't want to go too fast and it takes too long. Okay, let me try sending it again. All right, did everyone get it now? Okay, great, great. So yeah, let's just take a couple of minutes and let you guys download that. And once it downloads, go ahead and launch Revit 2020. That is a 2020 file. I'm sorry, you can't downgrade to 2019. So go ahead and open Revit. And to bring in those keyboard shortcuts, we're going to go to the file. And we're going to hit Options. And in our user interface button, look for the keyboard shortcuts option and hit Customize. And go ahead and hit Import. And navigate to that folder or wherever you downloaded those files to and hit Open. Select the file and hit Open. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to merge or overwrite? It's up to you. And go ahead and hit OK. And feel free to raise your hands when you guys are ready to move forward. All right. So the first webinar, we got into some advanced concepts with nesting families, how that could expedite your work. But if anything, what I wanted to really emphasize in the webinar was that, yes, Revit is a 3D modeling program and it's great and it's fun to use, but it's a workflow program. You can put together a building so much faster if you have a set workflow ready to go. So we had to put this model together before getting into creating materials and assigning materials and really start pulling some data out of the super basic model. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some materials. So let's go to our Manage tab and let's head over to Materials. And at the bottom left-hand corner, we're going to hit Create New Material. There are some default concrete materials already loaded into an out-of-the-box Revit structure template, but they already have predefined assets. What an asset is, see these 3 tabs over here? If I go into the search and I type in concrete, some of them, as we go down, will have more tabs. These are assets, pre-assigned assets. Assets are great. If we go to physical, you know, they got all sorts of extra parameters in here. But the whole point of the webinar is to introduce Revit or make it less terrifying for someone that is trying to use it on a daily basis. So what I prefer to do when it comes to creating materials for the first time is I create default new materials, because then, you know what, we can add these tabs as our Revit system gets more and more intricate. You can add complexity to it. You definitely don't want to start complicated, okay? So I'm going to X out of the search, and I believe if I type default new material, there it is. You can see that you can add more tabs. We're not going to do that. So now let's rename this material, right click. And I like typing the material first, concrete. And we're going to go with slab on grade. Enter. So now it went away. So now let's clear out of here and let's look for concrete, slab on grade. There it is. And now let's go over to the graphics tab and let's start assigning, you know, our company standard. You know, look at your old AutoCAD drawings and start seeing where you can make this stuff look nice. So in the background, let's say that we're going to go with the solid fill. And the color is going to be not that dark. Let's go with a good 200. And then in the foreground, we'll go with the darker color, and this time we'll assign a hatch. Okay. And actually, as you see that this is, if we minimize these triangles, that's surface pattern, what we just modified. If you don't want to see hatch on surface pattern, but you want to see it in cut pattern, well, this is where you make your change. So you know what, let's do that. That sounds a little bit better. So let's just remove this one entirely, no pattern. I guess you can't say no color, so we'll leave that alone. We got our background color. Now let's go to our cuts and we'll make the changes here. So for the pattern on the foreground, we'll choose concrete, and the pattern in the background, we'll say we want it solid with a 200. I think that was the number that we saw in the first one, 200. 201. Let's just be different. All right. So that's slab on grade. okay? On the identity side, you see here's the name. You can add keywords here when it comes time to search. So now let's right click and duplicate this guy. And let's rename it to Concrete Foundations. Okay. Duplicate that one. Rename this one to Verticals. When I say verticals, I'm thinking about walls and columns, any vertical element that is going up. Now, why not have just one material for all concrete? Well, today we're going to talk and get a little bit into scheduling and how to use schedules to expedite your work and data and extracting data. And when we're thinking about VDC and bridging that gap between the 3D BIM world and the design side with the architects, engineers, and the construction side, everything in construction is based on an activity. So when we think about foundations and we compare that to what we have modeled in the background, well, foundations really go first, right? They get poured first. So if you're trying to create a material takeoff or a schedule, well, you need to be able to isolate just those elements that are related to the foundations. And you can't do that well if you just have one material for all concrete, okay? So we'll use these three for now: slab on grade, verticals, and foundations. Let's hit OK. And now let's start assigning these things. So at your own pace, you don't have to start with where I'm starting, but let's go into floor under the edit tab and let's assign these materials. This is going to be slab on grade. Okay. You can see it's starting to change colors and look a little different. So now let's go to the foundation. I'm sorry, we're still doing slab on grade. Let's hover over that footing thickening. The first hover is going to highlight the column. So now let's hit tab on your keyboard and click. And from there, we can go into edit type. And you can see that, we don't have a material assigned or the option for a material. Okay, but while you still have it highlighted, if you go over to the right in the properties, you can see that, okay, I got structural material there, but I can't assign it. Well, if we think about the hierarchy of how we created that thickening lives inside of the column family. And right now, that thickening is an instance parameter. Instance parameters live here. Type parameters live here. They would live here. So there's a couple of ways that we can assign a material to that thickening. We can use a series of parameters, link it to the column so that we can update the material of the thickening through here somewhere, kind of like this. Or we can move this structural material into the type properties of that footing thickening so that we can access it within our project. So let's go through that. So now that this footing thickening is shared, I don't know if you guys remember that term being shared, we can access it through the project environment. So let's click on it and hit edit family. Okay, you can change this look if you don't like it. So the shared checkbox that I was referring to is this one, and Revit gives you an explanation. When enabled, Revit recognizes the family separately from the host family. The beauty of that is that I was able to open this footing thickening directly from the project. I didn't need to open the column, then grab the thickening and open the thickening from there. So when we selected this thickening in the project, we saw that structural material was an instance parameter, but we couldn't change it. So let's go over here to family types on the top left, find structural material, and don't assign a material because we're going to do that in the project, but click on the title, and on the bottom left, let's hit the edit button. And here is where you get to change where you want that stuff to appear. We don't want it to appear in instance because we have no control over that unless we link all of that in the column family. But we can move it into the type section. Let's hit OK. Nothing changed here. Okay. And when you're here in the family editor, you don't necessarily need to go into the edit parameter to see if it's a type or an instance parameter. This is your clue. If there is a default in parentheses, Revit is telling you this is an instance parameter. So if I click on column width and hit edit, you can see instance. Okay. So let's hit OK and let's load this into the project. We're not going to save it. Let's override. Now let's hover over that thickening. Let's tab into it, select it. You can see that the structural material is now no longer visible here, so we should see it here. And there it is. We can now update this material. So let's go to that browse button and look for your slab on grade activity, because those thickenings will be poured with the slab on grade. Let's hit OK and OK. Okay. So our slab on grade activity, we've already set those materials. Now let's tackle our foundations. All right, so I like to, I'm very literal. I like to look under, and let's start with these continuous footings. So you can see, same thing, right? In the first webinar, we weren't really focused on where to place parameters. Everything comes in phases, okay? So now that we have our geometry set, now let's go back in and repeat the same process. So let's go edit family, top left-hand corner. And now let's, you see it says default, so it's an instance parameter. And now let's click on the title, hit edit parameter, and let's change that to type. And we'll load that into the project. And go ahead and raise your hands when you get there, if you don't mind. I'll wait a little bit. I see a couple of you raise your hands. I'll wait a little while longer for the rest of the attendees to join or to catch up. All right. So now we can go into this footing and update those materials as well. Now this one's going to be foundations. And we can hit OK. So since we did this family, which in this case is called family 2, remember that we didn't create a separate family for this grade beam. We just created a different type, right? So if we go back into edit type properties, see the name of the family is family 2, but the type, that's where we have 2 of them there. Okay, so we don't need to repeat that task for grade beam as well. So we don't need to go inside of the family editor, but we still need to go here and assign it. All right. So it seems I forgot this one right here. This thickening family also needs a slab on grade option. And for that, we got to repeat the same process by going into edit family, top left-hand corner, and family types, and updating structural material to be a type parameter. And load into project and close. Now we can go into thickening and update the material in the edit type properties. I'm sorry, and selecting the browse button and going for slab on grade. Okay, last family we have to update materials for, at least on foundations, are these rectangular footings. So again, this is a instance parameter. Why Autodesk set these up as instance parameter, I will never know. You know, I don't know a situation where I want this footing to be concrete cast in place gray and this footing to be concrete foundations. We want all footings to be concrete foundations. So let's go back into edit family and do this one more time. I know this is redundant, but repetitive, when you repeat something over and over, it becomes second nature. So let's load in a project and close. We will not save. Hit OK. And now we can go into the type properties of that footing and update this material to foundations. All right, so as far as foundations and slab on grade are concerned, we've set all of our materials. So now we'll do the columns and the walls a little later, because you can see that columns as well, they're set to an instance parameter. So let's just focus a little on foundations and start extracting some data. So we have two main types of scheduling tools that are very powerful. If you hover over schedules and quantities in your project browser, you got schedule and quantities, and then you got a material takeoff. Let's play with both of them and see what the differences are. So let's go with new schedule and quantities. And let's hit multi-category schedule. From the available fields, let's grab family, and we can get type as well. Where's just type and type. And we can try and get see. And we just discovered something together. So when you choose multiple categories, you see how there's no volume? I got no volume. I got no area, which are the important, numbers that we want. So that forces us, if we cancel here, so we can say no to multiple categories, go back and hit new schedule and quantities, but this time we choose something. It looks like that we are limited in how we create a schedule. Like all we can do here is create a floor schedule. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And now we can bring over family and type, volume, and area. And hit OK. Now let's hit 3D, and on your keyboard, type in WT for window tile. So if we click over here in our floor schedule, and we click on the floor, you can see that it highlights over there on the left. We got cubic feet over there. Now let's create a material takeoff, okay? Go back into schedules and quantities, right click on it, and now let's say material takeoff. We don't want a multi-category material takeoff. We want floors, and let's hit OK. And now let's go ahead and grab the same ones, family and type, add, all the way down to the bottom. We got volume, add. Then we got another one, material volume, add. Now at the top, let's grab area, add, and grab material area, add. and let's hit OK. All right, let's check this out. So far, the numbers match. So what's the point of creating just a floor schedule and a material schedule, right? Let's close floor material takeoff. Let's go back into new schedules and quantities and create new material takeoff. And this time, let's try multi-category. Let's see what other options we get. Hit OK. Now let's do the same parameters that we did for floor schedule. Let's grab family and type. You see how we don't have volume anymore, but we do have material volume, material area. And let's hit OK. Now we're getting everything, every single thing in the model that we wanted to grab. I should have probably renamed these from family 6. That's a little annoying to look at. But let's keep, it's neither here nor there, right? Let's keep refining this schedule now. Because right now, if I click on something, it physically highlights what I'm looking at, right? So for this multi-category material takeoff, let's just call this foundation takeoff. The reason why we went with a multi-category material is because we have both, over here on the left in our 3D, we have both structural foundations that are magenta, and we have structural framing, which is green. So we have to use the multi-category. So now in your schedule, just click once in your schedule, and over on the right, let's click on filter. We want to be able to filter out by the name. You can see that that's not available because we didn't add it in the fields. So let's go back into fields. Let's go to material name and add it over. And then in the filter tab, now we can filter by name equals and just choose foundations. Foundations. Let's hit OK. All right, we're getting somewhere. Now let's keep refining. I know a lot of people like living in here and doing all of their changes all at once. My brain can't process all of that because it's easy to get lost. So I like to make one change, apply it, take a look at it, and then move on from there. If you're sharing the schedule, with anyone on the outside, they don't need to see material name, right? You needed to filter by it. So let's go over into formatting. Select material name and tell Revit, I don't want to see this, and hit OK. Okay. Feel free to raise your hands when you guys see that one, or when you guys are good on that. All right. All right, let's keep refining. We need to see some totals down here. All right, so let's go back into one of these edit buttons. It doesn't matter which one. Each edit button over here on the right represents a tab, okay? So you can access them either which way you want. So let's go to sorting and grouping now. And let's just click once on grand totals and hit OK. All right, so it's giving me a count of 27. All right, let's go back in, sorting and grouping. What do we want to sort by? Let's sort footing. We can sort by alphabetical. So we can say family and type, and it's ascending. We can hit OK. There you go, alphabetical. So there's a nice another change. Let's go back into sorting and grouping. And now let's start, let me move this over here. Now let's start getting these totals down here. So under formatting, you click on the column that you want to total up. So material volume, and on this last drop down where it says no calculation, to calculate totals. And we're gonna do the same thing for, we don't need area on this one actually. So we'll make that one go away. So let's just hit okay. All right, we got a total yardage. Now let's keep going back in under formatting. And you can either flat out, let's go to fields and let's just remove area. Because you know what, for foundations, we don't need them, okay? And now we don't wanna see each individual item. So under the sorting grouping button, we're gonna uncheck itemize every instance and hit okay. So now in 3D, if I zoom out a little bit, and in my schedule, I click here, now it selects all of my footing because they're all grouped together. Same thing with my foundation wall and my grade beams, okay? So I'm hoping that you're starting to see the pros and cons of using the different type of schedules, you know, because you got an actual schedule, which is a quantity, or you have a takeoff. And the takeoff is very powerful because you can get so many different categories in here, you know. So why don't we, instead of creating more than just, instead of creating more schedules for just, you know, another one for walls and columns, let's keep adding it here. And now we can keep refining what we're doing. So let's go into fields now. And let's go into the filter. And we don't want to filter by anything this time. Let's say, no, we don't want to filter. But in the sorting and grouping, let's see what option we have. We have the option to sort the material by a name. So let's sort by name first. Okay. And then we're going to sort by family and type. Let's hit OK. All right. Now that I'm here, I'm going to rename some of these families because that is supposed to be thickened slab edge. I should have done this before. Sorry. Thickened slab. Just so I can see. And that is thickened slab as well. Okay. And then over here on the left, under framing, let's just check some stuff out here. So this is going to be a footing. Let's rename the entire family, and we'll call this footing thickening nested. This one, rename, we can call it continuous footing. And this guy, we can rename and call it thickened slab edge. All right, that makes my schedule a lot nicer. Okay, so now we got it's filtering, or it's sorting by materials. So let's turn on the material name, because if we go to formatting, click on material name, let's turn it on, unhide it. We can see if this is coming in the order that we want. It just so happens to be just because of the alphabetical situation. So this cast in place gray, we're gonna change that to be walls and columns, okay? But we wanna divide this up. So let's go into sorting and grouping. And after each change in material, we're gonna want a footer. That gives us a total. And hit OK. Okay. Starting to look like something. But we want to be able to see the name of it. Like we want this name over here. So let's try and see if we can figure that out. Sorting and grouping. You can add a blank line if you want. This blank line, this checkbox right here, adds another line right here. So let's see what happens when we hit header and hit OK. OK. It's even more nicely split up and clear. And we probably don't need that 68 grand total. Nobody cares about that number. So back into sorting and grouping. And under the grand totals on this dropdown, say, I just want totals. And we're golden. And go ahead and raise your hands when you guys are ready to move forward. We'll wait a couple more minutes. If you want to take this time to update, your column family and update that material, go for it. Same thing with the wall material. You guys can update that as well. Okay, enough of you have raised your hands. So now let's do what we were talking about. Let's update this column. So we move the structural material into the type, and let's do that by edit family. Top left, find family types, and click on the title, and then on the bottom left-hand corner, change these buttons to be type. Okay, and load into the project and close, and hit yes. Oops, what did I do? Load into the project and close, hit no. Don't want to save, hit overwrite. Okay, now let's update these columns and walls. Go at your pace. We want that to be concrete verticals. Oh, and the shortcut, as we progress a little bit more in the webinar, I'm gonna start using more shortcuts, okay? Especially for those of you that loaded in the keyboard shortcuts, this should all work for you. So if you wanna access edit type without clicking, just type in TY on your keyboard. That takes you straight in. And you can update this guy. Verticals and hit OK. And OK. And you can see everything's nicely automatically updating over here on the right. Okay. So why are we going through all this trouble? Well, we preach how Revit is awesome and automating, and this is, your first project as a company or as an individual, you're learning Revit. You don't have to create these takeoff schedules every time that you start a new project in Revit. Okay, and I'll be emphasizing this throughout the webinar, is if we go all the way up to your file menu and hit save as template, now you're building on a template that you can keep using when you create a new project. Or if you've been tasked to implement Revit in your company, well, you keep overriding the template with new changes that you make. Because if you save this as a template and you find your file location, then you just delete all of this. Then when the next user comes in to create a new project, they have all of these takeoffs already created. Okay. So you can rename this takeoff, we'll just call it concrete takeoff. We can now hide a name because we know that it is sorting the way we want. So let's go into formatting, click on the column that is being represented over here, material name, and let's hide it. Okay. All right, and we can just close this guy for now. And we can close this one as well. Okay, we will come back to that schedule later. All right, Now let's get into more advanced topics. We have our material set, and now we're gonna punch a hole through this door. And actually, is everyone good for us to move on? Please show of hands, please. Okay, we got one person. Raise their hand, ready to move on. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So we're gonna put a door in here. But if you're coming from the structural side, which this is what we're pretty much handling today, is when you receive a wall from an architect with an architectural door in there, and we can place one if we go to doors and go to single panel door and drag and drop this guy, and just hover over it and just click to place. If you don't see the actual door, you have to turn it on, all right? That word on off, that is key, or that's code for visibility graphics. So on your keyboard, type in VG, look for doors and check it, and then enter. All right, there's, our basic little door, right? But this door doesn't give us a lot, right? Okay, great, head height. If we go into the edit type, there's just some basic stuff here as far as materials and some basic dimensions that work great for an architect for what they're trying to do, but possibly don't give, a structural engineer everything they need. So let's just say that the structural side, this is their equivalent, right? So this is the architectural 36 by 80. Let's take a structural 36 by 80. Let's wait on that. And let's place it right next to it. All right, now let's look at these doors in elevation. So go to level 1, and we can just cut. Let's just do a section cut here. So at the top, if you have it here, great. You can see that there is a shortcut for section cut. I've assigned it as CT for cut. So I'm going to hit CT on my keyboard, click down here, and go up just to look at that elevation, and double click on the head to open it up. Okay, so these are the same dimensions, right? One is architectural, the one on the right is architectural. You can change something here, consistent colors, and you can change the scale just so these line weights aren't so heavy. Okay. But aside from there having an X through the structural door, there's really not much more value that the structural door provides us, right? So what we need to do is we need to build or add to this family that gives us more value, more information. So from the subcontractor side, if an architectural door is 36 by 80, we have to take into account the rough opening. How much wider does this opening need to be in the concrete wall to fit the frame, to fit all the hardware, all of that stuff, right? And if we click on one of these door families, or the structural door family, and go to the edit type, you can see we have the option here for rough width, height, and thickness, just not being used, okay? So let's try and see if we can use them. So let's go into this door opening family by edit family, okay? And instead of back, let's go to front. So on your views, under elevations, hit placement side, because that is the same as the front. Okay, here it is. And on the top left, under family types, let's go over there and just look at our parameters. We have rough width, rough height, and thickness ready. So if we hit OK, let's try and use those. So these reference planes are strictly architectural, right? They're referring to the architectural dimensions. In the concrete world, we will add a reference plane. So hit create, reference plane, pick lines. And on the offset, let's hit 2.5 inches. Hover over the reference plane and hover over the top of it. So it hovers over the top, not at the bottom, the top. So in real life, we will allow 2.5 inches on top and a total of 4.5 inches on the sides, a total. So that would be 2.25 each way. So click this way and click that way, okay? So far, so good. Now what we can do is we can assign parameters here, create parameters here to let us adjust those dimensions in the project environment, right? That's the way you build a family, is you want to set it up in such a way that anybody, whether they're novice or advanced, updates those dimensions in the project. You don't want people going into this edit, this family editor and start, you know, nip-tucking things, okay? So let's place a dimension, DI, and let's go from out here to the very outermost edges. And now let's place another dimension from the reference level to the top. Okay. Now let's grab this dimension and change it to rough height. Okay. Same thing with this width. Let's change it to rough width. All right, so far so good. Now let's go to the View tab. And you see this Close Inactive button? We have all these tabs open, all right? But when you have a bunch of tabs open, it actually slows down how Revit works, because Revit is regenerating every graphic and every view every time you make a change. So let's go ahead and hit Close Inactive Views. And now let's open the floor plan for this family, reference level. And let's tile these windows, WT. All right, so this is our project, this is our plan, and this is our elevation. So there is our equal dimension, which is super important if you want something to behave based on a center line, okay? And we have our width dimension there. And in the elevation, we have our height dimension here. So now let's start adding parameters to change the additional opening size that we want. So let's place a dimension, DI, from here to here. Let's change this scale, 1 inch. Let's go 3/4, no. 1 and 3/4, ½ inch. Why? I can never get this right. There we go. Now let's place 2 more dimensions on these door jambs. 1 here and 1 here. Now we're going to grab this dimension and say up here, we're going to create a new one. And it will be a type parameter. And we'll call this, we can say rough. I'm good at names. Vertical additional. All right. And hit OK. And now grab this other dimension and let's change that one to vertical additional. Now you're starting to get a little bit more issues when you're trying to complicate a family. Revit's letting you know you're doing too much, okay? This is what it's telling you. You are doing too much. Reference planes are over constrained. Okay, well, what is constraining that reference plane right now? Well, I got a dimension going from the width to the vertical additional on both ends, but I also have rough width there. See that? So we have to remove one of them, okay? So what we can do is we can cancel And we can simply just delete this dimension. And now grab this one and change it to vertical additional. Now our issue went away. And we will tackle how we get that total of rough width, how we're going to get that total. It's going to be a formula with these guys. So let's create a parameter for this guy. So let's select that dimension, new parameter. On the parameter name, you can say, you know, header dimension. It's good to keep them short because when we start getting into formulas a little bit later, when you have a super long name, it gets a little complicated. So I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, now let's maximize this window by going to View tab and hitting Tab Views. And now let's test this. So let's pull this slightly off to the right. And now under the Create tab, let's hit Family Types. And remember, these guys, this rough width and rough height was populated when we placed a dimension, right? So now let's go to, what am I trying to do here? I lost myself. Oh, let's test it. So 3 feet, let's change this to 3'6", 3.5. Okay, it behaved the way we wanted to. The width got bigger and it took the additional 2¼ inches with it. Right, that's exactly what we want. So let's change this back to 3 feet. Now let's play with the height. Let's go to 7'6". Let's hit apply. Oh, that guy didn't move. You see that? So rough height is giving you an issue right now where it doesn't want to update. Okay, so let's take this back to 7 feet and hit apply and okay. And let's remove this dimension. Now let's go back into Family Types and let's redo the test for the height. 7.5, hit apply. It's exactly what we wanted to happen. That's the behavior that we want. So what we're going to do then is we have to change what this rough width and rough height does for us. We just want a width from there. We just want a number. We want it to report, okay? So on the bottom left, let's go to Edit Rough Height. You see how you can't change it? It is a type parameter. You can't change this guy. And rough width, can't change this guy. So how do we get it to report? So let's try placing another dimension here. This is the life of family building, okay, guys? There's really no one way to get it all right in the first go. You're testing, you're diagnosing what didn't work. So let's grab this dimension and let's see if we can change it to rough width. We're gonna get that same thing over and over again. So that's not gonna work for us, okay? Using this vertical additional and header dimension, we're not gonna get what we need out of it because it's just gonna keep telling us that it's over-constrained, it's over-constrained. And we can't change it in the up here, right? We can't change how those families behave because this is a door family and Revit has hard-coded what parameters will live in here regardless if you want to or not. Okay, so let's hit cancel. Now let's delete these guys, okay? And now let's change this one to be, let's think. All right, let's try something else here. We are diagnosing as we go. So this one has no dimension, no parameter. Let's place this one back in. And now let's go back into our family types. And you know what? We're gonna force that with a formula. So we wanna leave those dimensions in there, those parameters in there, because we need to be able to modify that in the project. So over here, we want a formula of width, which is that guy, width, plus, not plus, plus, parentheses, vertical hyphen additional times 2. Did that work? Did not work. Doesn't like it. So we got to keep adding to this guy. So let's rename vertical additional. Just vert. Okay. And header dimension is grayed out. Why is this guy grayed out? Because it's a reporting parameter. We don't want it to report. We want to be able to modify that. Okay. So let's see if we can update rough height. We want height plus header dim. Okay, that one worked. We're good on that one. You see how I graded it out? That's all we want. But now we need this formula to update as well. If we say it equals width, that's not going to work. So we need vert times 2. But why doesn't it like vert times 2? Vert times 2 plus width. It's the same thing, huh? Oh, there we go. So that works, guys. So if we hit apply, look at that, more issues. So now we're saying rough height is driven by the instance parameter header dimension, which is correct. And it's saying instance parameters can't be used in type parameters formulas. Remember we said that whenever you see a default on the name that's an instance parameter, Revit is telling you you can't do that. So let's hit cancel and let's go to the name of header dim, and on the bottom left let's change it to a type parameter and hit OK. And now let's hit apply. All right, nothing broke. Life is good again. So our reference planes are updating the way we want. Everything's great. So now let's hit OK. And now let's try to get this opening. We got to update this opening to go out to the rough opening reference planes. Okay. So if you hover over the edge, hit tab. Tab is your friend. Tab, opening cut highlights. Now click. Now we're going to edit sketch. And let's add more lines. Add a line that is locked and select the outermost reference planes. Okay. Now delete the inside ones. The shortcut for delete is EE on my end. And now let's trim everything together. And after you're done, hit the green checkbox for finish. Okay, so now when we hover over our wall, you can see that it's highlighting, it's cutting out the rough opening. That's exactly what we want. So let's select these 2D lines and let's reposition them. So click on this line. When you drag it over, when you have this, when you click and hold, right, you can drag this guy. If you hover over a line and on your keyboard, you type in SE, just like AutoCAD, right? Snap, endpoint. It hovers over the nearest endpoint. Or if you hit snap, for S for snap, and midpoint, it goes to the nearest midpoint. Cool little tips and tricks to make your life easier. So SE, do the same thing at the bottom. SE, same thing here. All right. Okay, let's load into project and close. We are not going to save it quite yet, and let's override. Okay, so you can see that it's starting to look like something, okay? They are the same size, but the structural door opening accounts for the rough opening, okay? So now, when you set up your door openings on the structural side, the concrete side, the builder side, now your family is set up. You don't have to think twice. When you look at the architectural door schedule from the architectural drawings, you can just go in here and start updating these numbers every time, because these two will update based on these numbers. That's how our formula is being driven, right? So that's the beauty of it, is if you have, you know, a 36 by 84, that number automatically updated, but you know, this is really 3 inches. Now everything starts a good workflow for you and your team. Hey, Kevin, how do I do these doors? Hey, look at the door schedule from the architectural, update your doors in your model, and that's it. You don't have to go into the weeds as to how this is working, okay? Let me hit cancel. All right, but now let's think about the builders. VDC, right? Let's go back into our 3D, type in 3D on your keyboard, and you know what? Let's delete the architectural floor, door. And with the raise of hands, go ahead and let me know when you guys are ready to move forward. All right, let's keep it going. So we think about that opening. How do they actually build that opening? Good old Google search. So let me pull over this guy. If you can see my screen and you see this guy right here, that's called a buck. In that case, that's a window buck. And yes, that's a CMU wall, but they use that for concrete as well. And if you think about the labor involved in putting this in and what a builder would want to know, they would want to know the true dimension of this block out or this buck. But in the concrete side, they also want to know the surface area, the finish area. So like, for example, let's click on this image. They need, after they remove these boards, right? They have to account for the surface area of troweling this, of finishing this, because that is labor. You know, they finish the top, each side. So why not, if you are in a structural design office, why not add that little but powerful functionality in your door family that you can then share with anybody that sees it? It takes, you know, it took us, what, half an hour just to get that one door to work right? But it'll probably take you half an hour, and then you have it set up and it's providing immense value to people down the road that are going to see your model, okay? So let's create this casework, all right? So let me get out of here, all right? So now we're getting back into nesting families. We know that our door is functioning the way we want. So let's open that door opening. So let's hit edit. Here it is. And now let's go into File, New, Family. Okay. And let's go and find Generic Model and hit Open. And on your View tab, go ahead and close inactive windows. I have that as CH for close hidden windows. That's what it used to be a couple versions ago. So CH. And remember, this family that currently has no name is going to be that door buck that we were talking about. Okay, and it's going to live inside of the door opening. So let's go through our standard procedure of adding reference planes. So reference plane, RP on your keyboard. We're going to pick lines, offset by 1.5 feet. left and right. I've got a thickness, a width, okay? So let's go with 6 inches. And don't forget to add your dimensions. One set of equals and one overall. One set of equals and one overall. Okay, we will add these parameters a little later. Okay, now let's go to an elevation of this. So type in 3D on your keyboard. The 3D will pop up, and then this will give you an idea as to which elevation to go to, the front elevation. So on the left, go ahead and find front, and there it is. Now let's offset a reference plane vertically for our height. So RP, pick lines or draw lines, however you prefer. Let's go with 7 feet and hover and click and place a dimension. All right, this is where we're going to do most of our modeling, is right here to create that extrusion. Okay, so let's hit create extrusion this time. Remember, we're not using a sweep now. This is just an element that gets placed in space. Create, pick lines. This lock, make sure that that is checked. That is going to save you, make you or break you. And let's select these outermost lines. And we'll also select the bottom, trim them together. And now let's offset a line towards the interior of that. So let's pick lines and let's offset by 1.5 inches. So hover over the line, hover over the side you want it to copy to. Now hit tab on your keyboard and the linked lines will highlight. Okay, there it is. And let's hit finish. Now, as this door buck gets bigger, we want this 1.5 inches to stay 1.5 inches, right? This says bigger, and then, oh, it did stay. We're good then. What I was gonna say is you could copy this over 1.5 inches and lock it, you see? I like locking things to reference planes. It makes me, sleep better at night. So if you guys wanna do that, great. For the sake of time, I will not. All right, so we have our door butt created here, but we have to finish locking this guy on plan. See that? There it is on plan. So this time just grab the extrusion, pull it to the outside until the lock comes on. Same thing with this one. And we're done with locking, okay? Now we can start assigning these parameters. This one's gonna be thickness. Sorry about that. And we need this to be an instance parameter because we need the door family to drive these dimensions, okay? Okay. And this one's gonna be width. And obviously the one in our front elevation is gonna be height. And then I'll give you guys some time to catch up a little bit. And CH for close hidden. And whenever you guys are at a good stopping point, go ahead and raise your hands, please. Oh, a lot of you raise your hands. Okay. All right, so let's keep it going. So we mentioned that now we can work in 3D, right? So there it is. And we can assign, just shade it so it looks like something. And if you want to assign a material to this, you can by selecting it and over here, go ahead and assigning a material or creating a parameter for material that you will then update in the project. So let's do that, okay? So let's back out, select your extrusion, go to material, but don't assign a material, assign a new parameter and create a new parameter. That is a type parameter. We want all door bugs to have the same material. And we'll just name this material and hit okay. All right, now we'll change that. We'll update the material in the project. Okay, we need this surface area, these two vertical sides here, and that one right there. So what we're gonna do is a good old formula. So let's go on top left, back to family types, and we're gonna create a new parameter at the bottom. And this is an instance parameter because the door frame might change. And we'll just call this surface area. Or actually better, finish area. And before you hit OK, be sure that the type of parameter is area. Okay. And I like grouping this under data and hit OK. So let's try and come up with a formula that works. So we need height. We need height over here, if you follow my mouse, height twice, width once. And then we got to multiply by the thickness. Okay, so let's try and figure that out. So let's go with height times 2. We need that value. And we're going to add width to that. So we're still in linear, right? The value of this formula is still a linear foot, okay? And now let's multiply by thickness. And let's see if this works. Okay, 17 units. We don't know if this family is doing square feet or what it's doing. If this is too much, right? Math wasn't my thing in school, all right? I learned this the hard way. You can break this out and then use it to create other formulas. What do I mean by that? Let's just say you don't like this. Let's get rid of it. And let's create a new parameter at the bottom. That's also an instance parameter. And we want just the length, right, in a line, the length of those 2 heights and 1 width. Let's just call it perimeter, right? This is a length, it's not an area, and we're also going to group it under data. And we'll hit OK. And you can move this up if you like. Now you can fill in this formula. Okay, this is height times 2 plus width. Let's see if that works. It did, 17 feet. And then over here, to fill in the area of that, we can say perimeter times thickness, 17 feet. So now the driver there is the thickness, or basically the width of our wall. So if we update that to 1.5 feet, you can see that the numbers are all working the way we want them to, okay? So let's hit OK. Now let's load this family into the door. Oh wait, let's show of hands. Is everyone good? Can I move forward? All right, so now let's load this family into the door. So uncheck model, let's check door opening. Don't want to save it yet. And let's just place it anywhere right now. Just place it anywhere. And we're gonna align this on plan and in elevation. So let's go to our floor plan. Let's pull this guy over. And now with these nodes, you can align and lock. So drag until it lines up, lock. Drag, lock, and same thing with the door jambs. But you see what it's locking to? Reference plane. Everything is the reference plane, okay? So whenever you think about where do I start when I'm refining or building a family? Reference plane, okay? And I want to also preface this by saying that the way I'm building this family probably isn't the way that you want to go about building this family. You can see that I left width here and I left height there. Technically, I could just delete this and have all these numbers update with formulas, you know? So there is no, let me undo that. There is no right or wrong way as to how to build a family, okay? But the fundamentals, reference planes, all right? Reference planes.
Okay, let's go to our elevation. Placement side elevation. We're gonna grab our casework, and what do you know? I can either assign the height. I don't have a node there. You see that? And here's a nice little hidden trick that few people don't learn the hard way. Yeah, can I go over here and hit rough height? Yeah, that works. It's not bad. But let's undo. If we used one way to lock all of these faces, you know, we use these nodes. We use these nodes. Try to keep it in that same procedure. If you use nodes to lock everything, try to keep it that way. So how do we activate the node here? Let's go back into the family. So let's click on your casework and hit edit family. Let's go to the elevation where we placed that dimension, which is the front elevation. And let's look at this height. What's wrong with this height? It's going to a reference plane. Let me hit edit witness lines up here. Okay, it's going to a reference plane. Huh. It's going to the level. So let me click once on the level to remove the dimension, hover over the level and hit tab. You see there's a hidden reference plane there? Click to place. And don't forget to reassign this dimension to be a height. Height. So all we did is we changed where this dimension was referencing from the level to the reference plane of where that level is at. Now let's load into the project and close. Let's see if this works. Load it back to the door opening. Don't save. Overwrite. Moment of truth. There's that node, that wonderful node. So remember, Revit doesn't lie to you. If you don't see a node where you feel you should be seeing it, you probably just reference a dimension to the wrong place. All right. Now we can move this up until that reference plane highlights, and we can lock. Now we can load this door family. We don't want to save it yet into our project, and let's overwrite. I don't want to save quite yet. And there's our door in all its glory. But when I click on it, I'm getting like door information. Where's like the casework information, right? I'm trying to tab in, it doesn't highlight. Remember that shared checkbox? We need to go back in and check that box. So let's go into the door. Let's click once on the casework and go inside the casework. And now while we're in here, let's hit shared. Let's check that box. We want to be able to access this family from the project. And then on the top left-hand corner, right next to family types, we got family category. Let's change that from generic models to casework. And let's hit OK. So now you got to go back up the tiers, all right? Load into project and close into your door. Hit OK. Don't want to save it yet. You do want to overwrite. Now you're getting constraints are not satisfied. So let's hit remove constraints and let's re-add all of them. Okay, let's go back to our level. And let's lock every, wait, did that get the reference plane? It did. Let's lock. And let's go back to our elevation and lock that one. So you see how much one checkbox can ruin your life? If we would have just checked that box and loaded into the project, for example, nothing would have updated and you would have had two doors. Because Revit's like, I don't understand that door, that little casework thingy that's inside of your door. So let's load this into project and close. We're not going to save this door yet, but we will override it here. And now you see that it went away. Remember, what category is it under? Casework. So let's turn on casework. What does the words on and off code for? Visibility graphics. VG, look for casework, and turn it on. So there it is. And if you want to assign a different color for casework, no problem. You know. So now we can hover over the door. So you can see the first selection is door. Let's tab in. And now the second selection is casework. Let's click on it. And there we go. We got beautiful numbers that people can actually use. So what if we change this wall to a different thickness? Let's change it to an 8-inch concrete wall. And now let's hover, tab, click. You can see numbers are updating. Before, so we got 11.42. Let's do an undo. Now we got 17.13. So it's working exactly the way we want. And that's valuable information for a builder downstream, okay? I'll wait a bit until you guys are ready. You guys know the show. Go ahead and raise your hands whenever you're ready. I'll wait for a couple more here. Okay. All right, let's keep it going. What else can we do with that door? Well, when you think about concrete and you think about a door opening, I think about rebar. So let's go back into the door opening and hit Edit Family. And let's go to that placement side view. And let's just add some lines here. Okay. So under Annotate, we're going to click on Symbolic Line. Revit's asking you, what plane do you want to place this on? We want to place it on the face of that wall. So hit Pick Plane and hit OK. You can see that my cursor changed. Now hover over the edge of the wall until the whole perimeter of the wall highlights and click. Okay. Now after you click, you go straight into lines because that's what you asked to do in the first place. So this is where we can pick a line with an offset of 3-inch clear and hover over your reference plane. Same thing over here. Hover over your top reference plane. You know, you can make this the way you need it. You know, let's center it. And now you can just place some dimensions that lock these lines in place. So as your door gets bigger, the lines follow. So let's place a dimension here. We're not going to assign a parameter. We're just going to lock it. Place a dimension here and lock. And another here and lock. Okay. If we click on the line, right now you can see it says just lines, doors. Up here under the subcategory, it's just doors, projections, and all these other options. We want to create a new line. Okay. For that, go to Manage Object Styles. And we're going to, over here on the bottom right-hand corner, hit New Subcategory. And we're going to say S rebar. Go ahead and hit OK. Now we created the line. Now we have to make these lines onto that line type. So click on these lines. Okay. And under the subcategory, go ahead and choose S rebar. Doesn't matter which. And if you want to add like, your diagonals here, your diagonal bars, go for it. So before we load into project and close, I want to show you guys another little trick that can really expedite things for you. Let's just say you don't want to see these lines every time that you have a door elevation, okay? And on top of that, you don't want to see these lines in every detail level, right? You see right here, it says coarse on the left. We got, coarse, medium, and fine. What if you only want to see those lines in a fine detail level? So we have the 3 lines selected, right? I'm sorry, let me re-click them. We have the 3 lines selected. Now on the top, on your ribbon, where it says Visibility Settings, this is where you can tell Revit, this is when I want to see these lines. I only want to see them when my view is set to fine detail. Okay. But what if you want the option to turn these lines on and off, right? So with them still selected, over on the right on the properties, you see that it's defaulted to just beyond. So default it to off and then create a new parameter, associate a family parameter. We're going to create a new one on the bottom left. This is going to be instance, and we'll put it under graphics, and we'll just say, oops, rebar, and hit OK, and OK. Now, oh, my lines are down here. Let's go ahead and bring these guys up, block, up, and block. So far, so good. I can't hear you guys, so I'll just say yes. So let's load into project and close. We're not going to save the changes. Say no and overwrite. So of course we're not going to see them here. Those are 2D lines. So let's go to the section that we created. Let's go to sections, section 1. All right, I still don't see them. I can see them under 2 conditions. One, to turn them on, right? Because the default is to be off. So select your door and turn on rebar. Okay, I still don't see them. That's because we set 2 conditions. The detail level. Now on the bottom left, you can click on detail level and hit fine. And we got lines. So now you have a very, it's a basic door, right? That we kept refining. We kept adding parameters to, we nested a casework door buck. We added some 2D lines for rebar for graphical purposes. And now one family that's super easy to place provides a tremendous amount of value. So what if we want these lines to come in heavy? Well, that's an object style. Remember the name of the line type is sRebar? So let's go to object styles, manage object styles. And since those lines live in a door, we're going to go to doors and open that tree. And there's sRebar. And now we can update this to be, you know what? We want this to be a 5 and a 5 and hit apply. And there it is, nice and heavy in the background. Family building is, it's where where you really get into the nuts and bolts of how Revit thinks as a program. Because who's to say if we cut a section here, CT for section, and we cut a section through here, and we look inside, and let's, on the far right over here versus crop view, let's not crop the view. And let's change our, let's change it to 1/2 inch or something. We have a door here, right? Let's go to visibility graphics and turn on casework. So there's our casework. Who's to say that in the door family, we don't add rebar here, curved rebar in 2D for, your graphical stuff. So there's so many ways you can go about this that'll make your life easier, funner to model in Revit, and you'll just, you'll be able to provide more value down the road. Okay. But now let's go back to the architectural side real quick. And let's look towards the outside of this wall. And before I move forward, let's go ahead and get a show of hands as to who's ready for me to keep going. All right, let's keep it going. This is going to be the last Revit thing that we do. Many times an architect knows that they want this to be a concrete wall, but they want a specific finish on the outside of this wall, a board form, for example. And that might not matter much to a structural engineer, right? But that matters a lot to a concrete builder, because the formwork for the exterior face of this wall is different now. It's more labor, and they have a different price for that. So let's try and provide more value with just a couple extra steps. Let's create a new material for board formed concrete. Under the Manage tab at the top, let's go to Materials. And you can, let's create a new material. Let's not duplicate those. Create a new material. And rename this material to be concrete, space dash space, board. If you want to set the same look and parameters to them, that's fine, you can. So let's go with, what did I have here? Cut pattern. I had solid fill at 201, but we're going with 198 now. And foreground, we're doing concrete. But on the appearance, this is where we can set an image, okay? So in those Dropbox files that you guys got, there should be an image in there for board formed concrete. So click on this image white area, white space, and let's navigate to that board formed banner image. And let's see how this looks. Okay. So we see what it's doing. It's just repeating, right? A bunch of times. Let's go back into there. And Revit is giving you an idea of the scale that it's assigning to this. But it's giving just a square 1 foot situation to this board form JPEG. But if we go to the image itself, you see my where's my preview? Okay, let's open it then. You see the proportions of this thing? So let's try and match these proportions. They don't have to be right, but if we assume that this is 6 inches, all right, then we got 1.5 feet, right? 1'6" this way, and let's go with 5 feet horizontally. All right, so let's go back in Revit, and let's make this texture editor just a little bit longer. And right here, we do not want to link these together. We want them separate. And let's see which one updates. So this one says specifies the horizontal scaling. We had said 5 feet. And the vertical scaling, we had said 1'6". Okay. Does this matter? No. This stuff doesn't matter. What matters are the numbers, right? From our scheduling in our Takeoff. This is just great graphics. We didn't assign any of these JPEGs to any of our other concrete foundations, but you can. It doesn't take that long, and you guys saw right here how to do it. So let's hit OK. So we have the material created. Now let's go to Paint. Okay, we find out under Modify tab, Geometry, and it's this little button right there. Paint. Shortcut is also PT. So click on Paint, and the Paint dialog box comes up. So good thing that board formed is already highlighted, but if you didn't find it, just do a search. So click on it, and now let's just select the face. Okay, you see the face? Just click on the face, and if you want, just for kicks, click on this end of the face. But we assigned an image, and we don't even see it. What's the point of assigning an image? So let me hit done out of the Paint editor. Down here, this is called your view control bar, okay? This little button right here for visual style, if you hit realistic, we should see the image. Okay, there it is. That looks highly unrealistic because our JPEG is, you know, it's probably not the best one. Could have been a better one. But just find a better JPEG, you know, to update. And this will look more and more realistic. So now let's put this stuff on a sheet. All right, because now with these last 10 minutes before we do a question and answer, I want to show you guys how to share this stuff without fear of people taking your stuff. Because I know that is a fear, but the beauty of BIM and VDC is that we're sharing models, right? It's good visualization. So let's put this on a sheet. So let's new sheet. And yes, let's use the good old default. And let's drag and drop that 3D view, this 3D view, drag and drop it. On the title, we'll just say, no, we don't want a title. And you can, oh, no, I'm sorry, guys. You know what? Yeah, let's double click inside of here, okay? Double click, that activates that viewport. It's the same thing as right clicking on it and hitting activate. And now we can come up with a better angle. What I'm hitting here is shift and scroll. Well, with a nicer angle. And now deactivate the view, get out of here. Now click on it and let's change the scale in the properties. It's at 1/8. Let's go to 1/4. Oh, that'll work for now. And now let's drag and drop our material takeoff. Concrete takeoff. Drag and drop it. Let's just place it anywhere. Okay. So you see how concrete board formed is there. But of course, there is no cubic yardage, cubic feet to that. So what we could probably do is we can go into concrete takeoff and remove board formed and then just create another one, another takeoff for just board formed. Make sense? But let's go into concrete takeoff then. Let's pull out this off to the side and let's click once on concrete takeoff. Don't double click. I want to show you a different way of getting into the same place. Click once on it. Now go over to the right and click any one of these edit buttons. And we can see it update over here. So let's add material as paint. And let's add material area. Let's see what this looks like. Hit OK. So you see what the different parameters do. The material as paint parameter, which is out of the box, you can't delete it. It's in Revit. It's just a yes, no. Is this painted on? Yes, it is painted on. But if you're sharing this with the builder, they don't know what this material as paint. That's a Revit term. Family and type, that's a Revit term. So we can go back into concrete takeoff, click once on it, go over into formatting. And here are the fields. You can change the heading. So on this one, you can say element. And then on material volume, you can call this neat concrete. Material name is obvious, but it's hidden, so we don't need to mess with that one. As paint, we can call this, you know, surface finish. Finishes. Surface finishes. And then the area, we can just say area. Okay. And now you can see how Revit populates material area for what it has information on. And you can see, like, there's no real benefit of knowing, you know, which one is it? 83 square feet for a column. Okay, that's deeper down the road, right? But the point of today was to show you, you know, how intricate you can get with schedules and just some basic family building, okay? Because if this doesn't work for you, if the way that this looks doesn't work, you create another one for just the board formed finish, just so they know, you know, how long or how much square footage they have. Because length is a good one to have in here as well. So how do we share this? Okay, let's go ahead and save this family. Let's just save it. And now I'm going to go over into the internet. And with a show of hands, is everyone at a good place that I can keep going? I can wait a couple minutes. Just raise your hand when you're ready. All right. So this is called Fusion. It's an Autodesk service. If you have an Autodesk subscription, you can create a Fusion account. Fusion, once you pay the subscription, you get to create many different folders, okay? But if you're just getting started and you want to see how to share models, you can rename this project folder. Right now it's called default project up here. Hit next and done. You can delete all of this out of here. Let's delete, yes. And instead of default project, you can rename that to just be, you know what, model links. Because in the trial version of Fusion, you can only create one folder for one project. So you can just rename that. Now let's upload our model here. Upload a file. And now let's go to Dropbox. And I'm going to upload that model. This takes a little bit. Okay, so it uploaded. And now when you hover over the name, you get a little drop-down arrow. And now there's this button that says share. Now you have a link that people can see. But this is the button that many people don't know exists. If you uncheck that, people are not allowed to download it. They can see what's happening, but they can't download it anymore. So now let's just copy this link, copy. Everything is active. Let's open a new web browser and just paste it in. And let's see what it looks like. All right, it's there. And anyone with internet can see this. And they can look under here. They can click on a wall. They can find properties for a wall. You know, if they want to know yardage, they can go to dimensions and get their volume. And this is all free services that Autodesk provides that you can use to the maximum to provide value. It's all about providing value to the builders, okay? But what about the sheet? Let's see what sheets we got. There you go. They can come in here and look at all your sheets that you have. They're not allowed to download anything, and they get valuable information that's going to help them in either bidding or being able to update prices as things change, because we didn't take long to update this link, you know. And honestly, let's go back to our Revit project. You can include somewhere in your title block a link. You know what I'm saying? So let me put just a text field, right? I'm going to type in TX for text. Click anywhere, and you should still have that link copied. So I'm going to hit Control V, and let me underline it. Let me underline it and hit OK. Once you print to PDF, this will automatically be a link. So anyone that sends or that has your set of drawings and sees that link in there, they can just click on that link and go straight into this model. And they can look at valuable information that you presented, that you created. This is your baby. You created it. And you should be allowed to show off your work. You know, this is where pride comes out, because you did your best interpretation of, well, you know, the simple box of a building. Okay.
I know we covered a lot. This is the main points that I wanted to cover. Just get into one family, that one family, and see how intricate we can get with the one family, and how that can truly provide value down the road. And then after you're actually collaborating with different offices and you want to give them the functionality to download, all you have to do is go back in here and under the share, you hit download, allow them to download. Now, I know some offices are very weary about sharing models because there's content there that's created. Well, if that's the case, on your sheet, speak to your representatives, the decision makers in your company, and ask them, hey, can we put a disclaimer here, that says these numbers are for reference only. You still need to back check these numbers with your numbers. Is there anything that we can put here that saves us from any liability issues or anything like that? Like, those are conversations that you can have. And the more you are able to put more information on your drawings by working with Revit, the better off everyone will be. All right, everybody. That's what I had for today.